Okay, so this is The Grass is Greener on WXRW 104.1 FM in Milwaukee. I am the host of the program, Gary Grass. With me is my co-host, Babette Bruneau.
Hi, and today we have Fahed Misalkhi. He's a senior teaching staff at UWM, and he coordinates the Arabic program there. And he says he's just a concerned citizen, and we heard him speak at a protest and said, you know, we need to get this fellow on. So welcome, Fahed Masalkhi.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I have my little notes that I jotted down at the demonstration. This was when the students were gathering in. First, they gathered in front of the library, and then they moved over to Chapman Hall, and they had a little picket there. But before that, they had like a little kind of mini teach-in where you just gave a short talk. And
right.
I have my little notes from that. They're really tiny. But it says as I recall, the organization was that what have we learned from this last year? And the first point on your list was that there's essentially no limit. No,
right. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'd like. Well, you can start off by just talking about that, because it seems to me like there's different actors in this who place different limits on other actors. It's just that, I mean, Israel seems like it has no limit on itself in terms of how low it will go or what it will do. I bet when you get a little bit further outside, like other orbits, there are, different limitations, but they're just not enough to stop Israel. So,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, concerning the issue that the students were complaining about, which is what is being done to the Palestinians, there appears to be no limit. I mean, as we speak, now, there is an effort to try to clear out the north of Gaza, and people are being pressured. What I heard today from some of the news outlets, like Democracy Now, I think, that they were the Israelis basically are surrounding northern Gaza, and they just asked people to come to the checkpoints. And according to Democracy Now, or the reporting there, they separated the men from the women and children, and sent the women and children walking, south, and kept the men. And basically, this is while a starvation is going on. So this is one example of the fact that there is absolutely no accountability that's being applied to the Israelis, no matter what they do with their with the support that they're getting from the military, the logistic, the diplomatic cover. They seem to chart their own path, and just America, with all its might, just goes along with whatever they want to do. So yes, I think it has been borne out by the last year, and from the anniversary on, that the Israelis do not really have either self-imposed limits or imposed by others limits that they can do to the Palestinians and the Lebanese, of course, here, and the Syrians, where they bombed the car yesterday because they wanted to get to this one guy. So they're operating in the region with completely free hand, and that's what they say. They say that we will reach whatever we want. So that statement is validated. I think you can't really put an argument against it. They have no limits on how they're pursuing this.
Well, let me say two things. First of all, there's a Al Jazeera little clip that's been running around on social media in the last few days that I think is very, very good. And one of the things it points out is like, look, you have not just soldiers with their TikToks, but you have the IDF officially putting out videos that show their people just killing civilians and identifying their soldiers that are killing civilians. And it's like, and you couldn't do this unless you knew that you had like absolute impunity to do it, because it's like you're just saying, here's some pictures of Sergeant so and so committing a war crime, and isn't this great? You wouldn't do that if there was any sort of accountability, right? It's like you're officially sanctioning this activity, and there's, that no one's going to stop you, or you wouldn't be like documenting it this way.
Right. That's the operating basically mode of the Israelis. Now, whether they're going to be sorry about this later on is an open question. But for now, yes, that is how they're behaving. They're behaving that you cannot put a limit to this, and they don't really care.
I mean, I think when you get outside of the Palestinian population, you see maybe some limits, but at the same time, like whatever the bottom is, it's very, very low, because they I mean, they're very happy to kill foreign aid workers. They're very, very the World Kitchen people that got murdered.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And there's people that coming in from aid agencies that they'll actually like call the IDF to like try to deconflict and coordinate, and the IDF will say, "Oh, that's where you are," and then they kill them. There's even if you're not Palestinian, the limit seems to be extremely low. On the other hand, there are at least a couple of American journalists that have been deported rather than get executed, right? Because when Jeremy Lafredo was just there, he was taken in by the authorities, and the Israeli court said there's no evidence against this guy. You're charging him with a capital offense. You're threatening to have him killed, but there's no evidence at all. And they said, okay, fine, we'll just deport him from the country then. So there looks like there's maybe some limit if you're maybe an American journalist, but it's like extremely, extremely low.
True. I mean, this has been to be honest with you, I'm sorry to be cynical about this. Maybe it is factual, but it is used to basically pretend that there are limits. But in effect, it's pretty grim.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, you can see like these little exceptions that are like put on as sort of a little fig leaf, and maybe that's sort of like kind of a tiny bit of a limit in and of itself, but it's like you look at the massive scale of what is being done. Someone has pointed out that if you look at some of the things that have been done, right, the attacks, they attack aid workers, they attack medical staff, they blow up all the hospitals. There were 36 hospitals when the conflict began, and like all of them have been attacked. I don't know. I think some of them are not maybe completely leveled yet, but all of them have been bombed. They kill journalists, they kill, they bomb churches, they get schools, they assassinate scholars. It's like there's like no protected group that is actually protected. In fact, some of the people said like, there's video, of some guy who's like there's like several bullet holes in the plate on his chest that says press, right? Because it's like being a journalist doesn't give you protection; it actually makes you a target in this area. And it's like, so, as someone observed, look, some of these laws against what these conventions against what Israel is doing, they're not stuff that just came up after World War II and the Geneva Conventions or something. These are things that go back to the Middle Ages that just, Israel just does not observe.
Right. I mean, that's been established, yes. The point is beyond doubt, so it's axiomatic.
So I think it's bizarre to me that you have people still in the United States that like, I mean, because like they say, this is a live stream genocide. Israel has been, and the soldiers have been very, very out about documenting everything that they do, right? So, just going in and leveling whole areas, going into civilian homes and staying there, and taking a crap on the bed and like destroying everything just randomly and burning everything down and
writing some nastiness on the walls saying, this is for so and so, and just and mocking them and such.
Wearing all the women's clothing, and then you have all these videos of like civilians back within Green Line Israel who are like putting all these videos together mocking the Palestinians. And you've got these popular
champagne parties.
Yeah.
Popular songs saying may your village burn or whatever, and this isn't like some fringe group. This is like the mainstream Israeli society is just like so deeply racist. I mean, they have that video of the two nice Jewish boys or whatever their podcast is talking about how if there was a button they could press it would just eliminate all the Palestinians, or if they press it in a second, right? And I think everyone in Israel would think the same way, right? And it's like
that's one of the part of what I teach. I teach Palestinian literature and history, and basically in the sense where try to get the students to understand how the Palestinians were able to keep it together as a national identity, although they don't have land, they don't have a country. I mean, in the world of a nation state, if you don't have a nation, if you don't have a land, if you don't have a state, you really don't exist. And the Palestinians were able to do this with different devices like literature and other things. So one of the novels that I repeatedly teach is Men in the Sun by Ghassan Kanafani. It was written in the 60s. But I have taken an angle from that to try to get people to understand that the novel covers the events of the Nakba, of the first, between 48 and 58, 1948 and 1958, the establishment of Israel. And it doesn't mention the Israelis. I mean, it talks about the story is about three Palestinians who get into a situation where they need to immigrate. Okay, so basically what the theme that I get students to think about is what kind of Palestinians were in that time frame, and compare them to the Israelis who founded the country, and then move across time into our current situation and look at the kind of Palestinians that you have, and then compare them to the Israelis that they're facing. To me, I mean, I'm not sure this is clear for you, but basically, I get them to sometimes look at people like Moshe Dayan. Do you know who Moshe Dayan is?
Yeah, the guy with the eye patch.
The guy with the eye patch. So if you read about Moshe Dayan, all in all, I mean, he was a very upright general. I mean, he was of a caliber that is nowhere in the horizon of someone like Netanyahu or the people around him. So that's the idea. The idea is that you have a generation of Palestinians that went through the Nakba that was not up to it. And the Israelis who came, they came from Europe, they came from civilized areas, civilized nations. They had experiences. They were
quote
able
unquote
to,
civilized.
Well, I mean, what I meant and the skill at the skill level. I mean, they were skilled. Yeah. They were tested. They knew management. They knew resources. They knew supply chains, and so on and so forth. And the Palestinians that had to face them were mostly people who exited the situation from the Ottoman rule, and then into really, the whole Arab world was like entered a dark tunnel in the 20th century, and they were part of it. And now you compare them to what's happening today, and I think I'm not sure how closely you looked at the Sinwar ending and how he is becoming very, very forcefully an exemplar for so many people. The way that he held his own. This is the leader of Hamas, dying in the battlefield.
It's become a very common baby name now for much of the world. Like
Yeah.
all the newborn kids are all Sinwars.
I didn't hear that part. But I think you understand the point here. So you compare the Israelis who are doing all these things that you just described to the Israelis who established the state or even fought in 1967, and you can see the difference. And on the other side, yeah.
I think he's being compared in some circles, at least in Latin America, to Che Guevara.
Yeah, absolutely. And Che is still admired, across the world because he was the ultimate revolutionary. But I mean, you see the point. The point is that you have a generational flip here, where the Israelis seem to have, these soldiers that are doing these things and just doing them in such a flagrant way. I mean, you ask yourself, where is the moral and ethical reservoir that they are like drawing from? I mean, who are these people? Why would they do this? Why would they behave in this way? And that honestly is the most pronounced thing that worries people who care about Israel, is that you're really in a situation where you do not have a clear generation that can take the country into the future, if they are going to, if they are what they are doing right now.
Yeah, it seems like, there was, you had that sort of initial generation in the late 40s that, understood that they would have to, engage in some ethnic cleansing, and they had a plan that would, involved a lot of evil, but they were in some sense like sophisticated about it. I mean, I don't know how to quite say this without.
Well, they were able to put themselves on the other side. I mean, Dayan famously, and even Ben Gurion before him. Dayan, I think, after an attack on a kibbutz or something, I really can't remember the details, but he basically told his group that, what do you expect? I mean, we came here, we took their life, we took their land. I mean, there's this recognition that, it's understandable. We will, put up our fight, but it's understandable. They are human beings just like us. And this is
if I were a young Palestinian man, I'd become a revolutionary. I'd join the resistance.
Exactly. I don't think you can see that sense.
He probably said I'd become a terrorist, but that's what he meant.
Well, but I mean, I'm glad you're familiar with it. But you can see the difference. I mean, and here we have just no recognition of the humanity of those people on the other side. Just doesn't come out, not even accidentally.
I mean,
it is worrying that there is not a recognition of the humanity of the Palestinians.
Yeah,
and primarily it's worrying, inside Israel and what effect that has. But it's also worrying that you see that in the U.S. media, in U.S. politicians. They don't seem to make the same concern for Palestinians as Israel.
Right. There is numbness as far as the Palestinians are concerned, but you have to differentiate between it being in the Israelis and being in someone else, because with the Israelis, the real risk is that it is self-destructive. It really is not. Again, if anyone who really cares about Israel will be extremely worried about going into the future with, this kind of a generation.
I mean, Chris Hedges talks about how you could, as a reporter in Israel and the occupied territories, he could see, through the decades, this sort of decline where
Right. Yeah.
you saw more and more of this really extreme, very fascist sort of outlook, and it was like kind of being very consciously built up over the course of a couple of generations, to the point where now that is the dominant view. And one thing that's about Israel that is, I mean, ironically, you have this sort of meme out there where Israelis and Jewish proponents of Israel will say, we have no other place to go, right? And they'll say this from Los Angeles and New York and from other places where they are, because they're not in Israel. But Israel has, compared to a lot of countries, a very fluid population that can easily go somewhere else. And you've seen, Ben Gurion Airport just swarming with people that are leaving the country.
They have two passports. They have one for Europe, or one for the U.S. and one for Israel.
Okay, I have two things to say about that. Okay, the first is that you're really talking about, if you really pay attention, it's two Israels. There's the Tel Aviv Israel is the one that you're talking about. The Tel Aviv Israel is the liberal, Jewish population that is, the startup nation mentality, the prosperity, all the new tech, the high tech, and the position that it carved for itself with a lot of help. I mean, they get a lot of licenses, especially from the tech companies. But there's creativity. There are good universities, good research centers, all of that. That is unraveling. I mean, as you speak, these are the people who are going to the airports. But you have the Israel of the East Jerusalem crowd, which is that is not unraveling. That's actually on Democracy Now! Today, they had this clip for the head of the settler movement, she's a lady. I really didn't pay attention to her name or her correct position, but basically,
I think I know that lady. I think I've heard her.
Yeah. Today they're saying that we are coming to settle Gaza, north to south, and that the Palestinians have lost the right to be here because of October 7th. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you have the two Israels here, and historically Israel has never been even on its best day, like talk about October 6th, okay, when everything was going great, everything is rosy, the horizon looks bright. Still,
the U.S. State Department saying everything's we've achieved peace in the Middle East, peace. Everything is great now.
Yeah, even in that situation, most of the Jews in the world did not choose to go to Israel. Israel was not the place where there's a majority of Jewish populations. If you count all the global Jewish population, most of them did not choose to go there, even in the good days. So there's a failure on that.
Yeah, part. I mean, someone pointed out once that if you were to list the top 10 cities in the world that have the most Jews in them, and listed all the boroughs of New York separately, 5 of them would be in the top 10.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
So, but I think one of the things that Hedge was pointing out was that this distinction, the Jerusalem versus, and he used different terms, right? I forget who it was that sort of popularized this Jerusalem versus Tel Aviv distinction, but
no, even what's his name, the guy from New York Times, famous Friedman. Actually, he says that he actually, one of his first interviews about the October 7th, he says he pointed out to someone who calculated that there were about 400,000 Israelis who are responsible for the prosperity of the country, and if they leave, the country is going to look very, very differently.
Well, I mean, one of the things that Hedges points out is that over the last however many generations. You've seen this divide sort of grow, and you've seen a lot of the the people that were more on the liberal side, right? Just progressively leaving the country because it's gotten more and more fascistic over time. But you still have this divide because you just have a lot of people that are like accommodated enough, right? I mean, they don't fit into the Jerusalem camp. They're still very mobile, but they're cozy with what's going on. They're not they're not offended by it. Their liberalism doesn't stand in the way.
Right.
But rockets and drones landing on them will get in the way and will drive them out. And then you'll have a much different looking country where you have just one side still there and the other side gone. And what's left is I mean, it's going to be really extreme. And it's not going to be especially productive. And I mean, you have people that are looking at this and saying that this really is the end of Israel. And this is, people. I mean, I heard a journalist in Lebanon talking about this, and this is happening right now. Israel is unraveling. And they can attack Lebanon, and Lebanon's used to it, and it'll be sad. It won't be happy. People will get killed. But Lebanon has survived that before. And will Israel survive? I mean, Israel is in real jeopardy here.
I mean, that's the worrying thing, that you don't. For all the technical prowess and the abilities that are the startup nation abilities, there is no wisdom in the country. I mean, there's really no wisdom anywhere in that political horizon. The way they're going about this, it is not good for the future of Israel. Period. Yeah.
No, and that's definitely something that's happening as we speak. And again, it's. I think Chomsky has been saying for the last 40 years that people that say that they're supporters of Israel are not really supporting Israel, right? They're supporting some idea that they have of what constitutes support, but these people will ultimately be the destruction of Israel, and we're seeing that, I think, happening now in real time. So
the main thing. I mean, I say this in my classes all the time. I get students to understand something. The future of the Israelis is with the Palestinians. Unless the Palestinians are given enough to basically sign off on the future of Israel, that is always going to be questionable. And this is really the puzzling thing. That when I said there is no wisdom, like no one is really looking at what can be a long-term possibility for this country to be sustained. And that the long-term possibility is where the Palestinians accept them. And they have never tried to do that. They have never reached a point where they gave the Palestinians enough to allow them to live in any, even half dignified life. And without the Palestinians, honestly, securing the future of Israel, it is always going to be at risk.
Whether you're looking at a one-state solution or a two-state solution.
Yeah, however you want to look at it.
It seems difficult if people within Israel do not seem, or at least a significant portion of them, do not seem to see the Palestinians as people. They're people worthy of...
Right. You look at the elections, okay, it's a democratic, it's the only democracy, okay, fine, the only democracy. If you look at the campaigns, the Palestinians are nowhere near, they're not there. They don't talk about them. Without the Palestinians, there's no future. You really have to find a way to secure something for them, give them just at least a modicum of dignified living, and you don't have to worry about Israel. Israel will stay if you. But they don't at all have that on the table or in the way that they think or they talk. Most of the reports that are coming out from all the think tanks worried about the future of Israel, they don't talk about the Palestinians. They just rehash the security scenarios. How can the country be more secured? What can we do with the weapon systems? And no one even mentions that. Well, your future is tied to this population. Why don't you try to, be fair with them, just even halfway?
Yeah, I mean, if you had something, if you, I don't know how you get there at this point, right? Because Israel sort of has cast its die, right? They first they went for apartheid and that wasn't working, so they decided they needed to ethnically cleanse, and that they
right.
Palestinians wouldn't just all voluntarily vacate themselves, so it's genocide now, right? It keeps escalating.
Yeah, the scenarios don't look promising, honestly.
But there is so much promise. If you look at all, every time, every day there's a story about some Palestinian who's murdered by Israel. And, of all the people that are murdered every day in Israel, they pick out, you get some story of someone who is like, well, this person was a really great artist, or this person was a really great poet, or this person was all these people like these great achievements. Achieved under fairly. The conditions have always been adverse, and some of these people were continued to produce work straight through the Holocaust that's going on now,
right.
And it's like there's so much human potential there. These people have accomplished so much. If they would be allowed to live and to prosper and not be constantly persecuted, just think of what benefit that could be to the development of a nation in that area, to the development of a state. You could have so much because you've got this huge base of human resources, and you're just destroying it. It's just, so yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about if you have any concern for your own academic future, because so many professors are coming under pressure. I just saw, I don't know about UWM's campus so much as other places. I just saw that Maura Finkelstein at Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania was a professor with tenure, and she was just fired. Do you have any concerns along those lines?
With UWM, so basically, the university approached me like a month ago and asked me to be a liaison with the community, and I'm saying that not to boast or anything, but to give you the mindset of the university. I think the UWM specifically, even much better than UW-Madison. Now, the system itself is aggressive enough, but the administration at UWM has shown to be more careful about this, honestly. The system does impose on them taking positions that the Palestinian students find unfair. But in general, we have a situation that is tolerable. So there is a risk, but so far we're doing okay.
Well, that's hopeful. That's at least somewhat hopeful.
Yeah.
It reminds me of experiences I had with UWM 30 or 40 years ago, where we were always intensely critical of where UWM landed on things, we thought it was terrible. But it's like if you take a step back and look at the big picture, you'd see they were under a lot of pressure to be much worse than they were. And you have a lot of people that are of fairly goodwill, that are very liberal, that like want to be fair. And I mean, I have a lot of criticism for the chancellor's office at UWM, and it wasn't a coincidence that the students were protesting outside of Chapman. But if you look at how they dealt with the student demonstrators, they were under so much pressure from the system and from the local Zionist community to be much worse than they were.
It's true. So it's true, and So I mean, there is pressure, but I think we're in a more accommodating campus, to be honest with you. So I hope that will continue.
A couple of the other points that you made, and we haven't really exhausted the no limit concept, because there's so many things that Israel has done in terms of all the different groups that they target. I mean, killing babies, killing animals, using all sorts of prohibited weapons, white phosphorus, the use of rape, of hunger, the use of, I mean, all the things that they were doing. And the new technologies that they've developed, with drones that are designed to like play audio just to torture people, or to like lure people out into the open. The AI that they have to find out when the journalist has gone home so they could kill him with his family. I mean, all this horrible stuff that they do. But you had more points than just that to make when you talked before.
I mean, I will tell you that what should concern us, and I mean, Israel will do what Israel wants to do. I think they have formidable opponents, to be honest with you. And you have. Let me just say one thing before I go back to what I wanted to say. The situation right now is where you really don't have a foe that is capable of punishing the Israelis. Like, I mean, not even Iran. Iran is worried about its own positioning in the area, and they will do enough just to stay in place and not be the regime, not to be destroyed or anything. But the Israelis are operating in a field where all the countries have regimes that will not lift a finger to do anything for the Palestinians. The populations are very, very unhappy. There was this one item today on one of the Arabic news websites, and this person is basically saying 2 million Egyptians can actually just walk across Sinai to Israel and end the problem. And that is, factually, that's probably true. Mm-hmm. So the Israelis are really operating in a favorable climate that might not continue to be the case. Now, leave that aside and just.
I mean, you can put little caveats on that. I mean, Ansar Allah in Yemen has been very effective at cutting off some of the shipments to Israel. They're standing up and
these actually are samples to what can actually happen had there been a will to do something from the power.
And you've had longshoremen in the U.S. You've had. I mean, Hezbollah, even though they could have done more, they did tie up Israeli forces with threats along the border in order to keep them from being utilized against Gaza. So I mean, there's been something. It's just there's what you need and there's what you get. And it's there's you should have seen the world community being against this and actually being able to do something, right? But you have so much power is just in the United States that has its veto and can just run the show from the Security Council and say, no, we're just going to go ahead and keep on sending weapons to the genocide.
Ideally, you should have seen the U.S. stopping the weapons to Israel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point that I really wanted to come to is what is this domestic situation that we're in.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the things that that I said there, and it seems like resonated with some of the students, is that everybody can see what the weapons are doing, and the administration just keeps sending them. Now, yeah, I mean, so domestically,
and the main difference between the two parties is I mean, it's really straight Walrus and Carpenter, right? You have Trump saying we need to do more to support Israel, and Kamala isn't doing enough, right? Biden isn't doing enough.
Yeah, what's coming? Yeah, what's coming is not.
And then the Democrats are just like all crocodile tears. It's like, oh, we wish we could do something. Here's some more weapons. Oh, we wish we could do something. Here's some more weapons. I mean, it's just it's this theater that is just so disgusting.
It is disgusting. But if you're really worried about America, okay, we're talking about here this country and our responsibility to keep it safe from making mistakes that are really, consequential. I want to, if you'll allow me, I'll just go into the teaching mode here for just 30 seconds.
Oh, please, that's fine. That's fine.
So one of the
we have guests to go on teaching mode for the whole hour.
Okay. So basically, one of the homeworks that students have in the new AI era is try to ask AI, why were we attacked on 9/11? Because teaching about this question, the why question, is very, very hard with especially American audiences because of the way that the whole language is framed around 9/11. 9/11 was a tragedy and all of that. But if you when the students interrogate 9/11, AI basically will give them, straight up wars in the Middle East, support for Israel, keeping the bases and the area, especially in Saudi Arabia. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it is one of the amazing things about 9/11 that the population did not have a clue why would we be hit. I mean,
Ward Churchill said it was the chickens coming home to roost, and he immediately lost his university position, right?
But even aside from that, I mean, the population itself, I'm not talking about the media. The media will do its role. It will keep this obscured. It keeps this under wraps. The Bush will come out and say, well, they attack us because they hate our freedom, because we're modern. So all of that now is no longer in the picture, because right now people can see the complicity of this country in this situation. I mean, everybody can see that. I mean, all over the world. If someone is concerned about this country, they should think about the fact that if 9/11 was a response to what we did at that time, what would the response for this going to be? Because people in the area, I mean, it's not lost on them. People really feel the agony every day with every news coverage, and it's building up. There is a lot of energy that is building up, and I'm really, really worried.
I mean, you have a lot of Americans with families in the region that we hear this every day from our friends, and I mean, I can't imagine what it's like when it's not just like a few of your friends that have family members that are at risk, but where you've got everyone around you is at risk as you speak. I mean, it's because Israel is acting like a complete madman at this point, and it's attacking every country around it.
And we're in the picture. I mean, we are on the we're responsible. We're the only ones that are. I mean, Germany's helping a little bit too, but we're primarily responsible for enabling all this conduct. With you're right, and
propaganda and diplomatic support, and just tons and tons of weapons and money.
So what was obscure 9/11 is no longer obscure. I mean, this is like straight complicity, and it's clear, and it's massive, and it has numbers behind it: 501 airlifts, and God knows how many shipments. So it's very worrying. It's very worrying for the reaction that might come against this country. Honestly, there's something that we should be worried about. Honestly,
I'm actually amazed. I haven't heard other people make that statement before, and and now that you say it, it just seems so obvious.
I was going to say, do you think people in the United States get it?
Well, people in the United States, unfortunately, are owned by the screens that they look at, and the screens that they look at. I mean, you are a unique couple in terms of your ability to look beyond the screens that we are fed.
Well, I mean, we're really not, because anyone can get on Twitter nowadays and just see everything that's there, and everyone can, I mean, I get all.
I think, okay, Twitter is giving you based on your preferences. So
right.
Yeah, others who do not have these preferences are really not in the loop, and most of the population, again, is somewhat. But listen to this: we're the only people who are in the dark. I mean, a lot of, like, Mersheimer just came back. He gave a talk because he was visiting the Middle East and China again. And he's saying that people all over the world are on one mindset about this: the culpability of the United States in this genocide. I mean, that is just clear to everyone. So, meaning if a 9/11 happens again, no one will say we're all American, because it looks like, it's a cause effect here. I mean, and that's why I'm really worried.
Right. I mean, there's the U.S. and Europe and like 10 other countries, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Australia. I mean, we've got our little small group of friends here that will still be all America, but the vast majority of the world gets it in a way that most Americans don't. I mean, it's like, you just leave this little portion of the West, and like everyone else gets it.
And I'm worried as I'm an immigrant. Okay, the leading sentiment I have towards this country is gratitude. I mean, it's really, I'm self-invested in this. My children are fully American. I have one grandchild who's hopefully going to live a good American life. And I'm worried about the country. I'm worried about the backlash of this that is really going to be much more horrible than what we saw before, if things continue the way they are.
I think immigrants are great for having that perspective, from that they have a little bit broader horizons and they can talk to people in other countries. I mean, it's like so many people that just don't have the foreign experience or the broad horizons to kind of figure this out. I mean, one of the problems that I think we've had here, and we talked about this in our last program a little bit, is just this lack of imagination, where whatever is they see going on every day, this is what they think things have to be, and they don't realize that there are other ways that things can be, that exist in other parts of the world, that have existed at other times. And there's just such this limited perspective, and people who come from other places, who have seen other ways of doing things, just have a much broader sense of what's possible. And I think we just need so much more of that in this country, because we just don't have it. And it's an incredibly valuable resource to have that perspective.
True.
Possibly changing with as the generations change, as younger people come up, who maybe are seeing more of this on the various media.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Again, when the encampment was on in UWM and all over the country, I also gave a few teach-ins. And one of the things that I told the students, that people in the world, when they look at America, when they look at the people of America, They see an administration that gives lip service to American values. I mean, exactly what we're seeing today for the administration going on and on about the need to have a ceasefire, the need to stop this, and they, you know, they send the weapons and they say that
we need more humanitarian aid to Gaza, so we've got to cut off all the aid and build a pier.
Right. So the hypocrisy is very clear. But I told the students that when people actually look at America, the only constituents that they see that is upholding what this country's values are the students who are in the encampment. So when you say, do you see it changing? I think this generation is absolutely going to change things. My worry is if it's going to happen fast enough. As far as the Israelis are concerned, I mean, the lobby and this blind support for Israel, the next generation doesn't have that. I mean, they actually have been. I think I said in the event that you were at that AIPAC actually, if you read or listen to Peter Bybert, I think his name is Peter Bybert. Beinart. So he basically has said long ago that within the Israeli constituents in the United States, the Zionists and the pro-Zionists, there is a long, there's an old conversation about the next generation that they are not going to keep hold of that. They have lost the next generation.
Right.
So
they can't bring enough students over to Israel to experience sexy time in Israel for them to like get the number of converts they need.
That's true. So all of that has basically made this entire trajectory of the future very, very open. And you saw how the students empathize. They have fresh moral perspective on this. So yeah, I mean, it will change. I'm hoping it will happen soon enough.
It was very positive to see the students really sticking with it and, you know, at that encampment, and that they were very open, that they were not only just Palestinian students, so students who, you know, close to that, but they were Jewish students. They were just.
That was one of the discoveries that we actually, I said it in there, that we discovered that Jews are not our enemies.
I have that phrase written down as note number 5. I mean, you know, when you talked about it, you said that was number 3, and I was like, I wonder what he can. I guess 2, 3, and 4 were all the same because my notes had that as 5.
No, I was looking at my phone. I should have printed out a paper copy because honestly, I don't use phones very well, and I think using my phone threw me off.
Well, we're old. We're seeing all these protests now where people talk, you know, give their speeches off their phones. We're like, well, that's not the way they used to do it in our day.
Yeah. So had I had it printed, maybe I would have kept a better count which point was what. But yeah, I mean, we actually discovered that Jews are not our enemies. This is not a religious issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an example where, you know, this generational shift has really come to your aid because, I mean, I remember when I was on campus. I mean, it's like I got called a self-hating Jew, and I'm not even Jewish. There's the people that were active on campus on the Jewish side were all these big Israeli nationalist people that were, you know, they had 2 pro-Israel organizations on campus, 2 student organizations. One of them was like the Republicans, like Rah Rah Israel, and one was the Democrats, Rah Rah Israel. And there was no Jewish Voice for Peace type organization or Not in Our Name type of organization. They didn't have anything like that at the time. Yeah. And, you know, over the last few years, especially, we've just been seeing more and more, particularly of the you know, younger Jews, but even like just people that are just like older, but just appalled at what they're seeing in Israel, because that's not what they're, you know, no one, never again meant something different to them, right? It meant we don't want any Holocaust against anybody, and they're just so shocked at seeing all this and just so disheartened, and it's a definite shout out has to go out to all the Jews. I mean, when you see all these like mass arrests of people, people being hauled in under anti-Semitism charges, and it's like half of them are Jewish.
Right.
I mean, it's like, pro-Semitism has been the greatest tool of anti-Semitism that they've ever come up with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bottom line is that generation-wise, there is no future for this. The other side does not have a future with the next generation. There is really, I can't see how.
So I just wish that the outcome in the short term could be as hopeful as you presented for the long term, because things are just so bad.
They are, but I always try to get the students to understand that it is what we make of it. Honestly, it just doesn't have to happen. We just have to up the ante. More people have to say this is bad, this is wrong, and it can happen faster.
Yeah.
I mean, people often say, what would you have done in Germany? If, what would you have done in the Holocaust? And so people get sort of a chance to decide for themselves now what they would do now, because this is a genocide. And so they can decide how they would react and what they need to do to try to stop it, to try to stop their elected officials from just going along with it, to try to stop the media from just going along with it, to do something.
Yeah, exactly what the students did. I mean, with the encampments and all that movement, it's being suppressed. I mean, a lot of the institutions and the Hillel, International, they all went into overdrive to try to suppress this, and they largely, I mean, it is toned down. It's not completely gone, but to verify what you're saying is that the people, had they been able to have a fair chance to express, they would definitely come on that side.
I follow someone on Twitter who is constantly reposting these different scenes of demonstrations and protests and boycotts, and always under the same heading where they said more, harder, faster. And I think that's just what we need. That's just what we absolutely what we need.
Exactly. Louder and faster.
Yes. And we're basically out of time. I just wanted to say I think that's a good note to end on a call to action. And I'd like to thank you very much for having been on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for what you're doing. I hope you do more louder. Okay.
We will try. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Fahed Misalkhi.